Welcome everybody. My name's Jason Howard and it's fantastic to have you join us tonight for How to Raise Positive Kids. I'm the pastor at Unley Park Baptist Church, and with Sarah, who you'll meet in just a little bit, who's our playgroup and our pastoral care worker. We are really rapt to have you join us. We're looking forward to hearing from Madhavi in just a few minutes. But I wanted to say that I think a seminar like this sells itself. I mean, how to raise positive kids. You'd be very interested, I'm sure, in tips, tricks, hints, insights, and we hope that this will help you as you raise your children. I think it's a bit sad that we can't actually all be in the room. What we know is at least 300 people have registered, so you're probably all sitting, I don't know, in your office or on a bed with a red wine and enjoying just what you're seeing now, but it's a bit sad that we couldn't all be here together. So we are speaking to a camera in a room full of tech people, but it'll be fantastic to share this with you. For tonight's format, we're going to hear from Madhavi first, so she's going to give us input. You'll see in all the various places that we're streaming that there are opportunities for chatting, and we want to encourage that. So if you have a question as we go along, put that question up. We have hosts. They're going to capture those questions, and then when we have the Q&A after Madhavi speaks, we'll be able to feed back and ask those questions. We probably won't be able to get to everyone's question, but we're going to try our best. Madhavi's asked that you put your name alongside the question, just so that she can address you and, I guess, add that personal touch. So, fantastic to have you with us. We hope that you feel very welcome as we host this. Our church loves putting on seminars that are free to build, I guess, capacity and help children and families thrive. So we really believe that will happen tonight. I want to invite up our pastoral care and playgroup worker, Sarah, and she'll introduce Madhavi now.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's really great to be here, and we're really excited to have Madhavi Nawana Parker with us. And Madhavi is the Managing Director of Positive Minds Australia, and she's had over 20 years of experience working with young people, children, families, teenagers. And what's wonderful when I've read through the different biographies and things that I've seen on Facebook and in your website is just how much the passion for young people and seeing them develop confidence and build resilience and just improve their social and emotional literacy. And it's really wonderful to read about how that's your passion, and just really excited that you were able to come share your expertise with us tonight. And you are a published author with some books that later on we'll put a link up on the live stream that you'll be able to find out more about that. So yeah, just really grateful. It's really hard, as Jason said, we're here in a room with just a few people instead of an audience. So we are grateful that you've done this a little bit differently to how you would normally do it. And yeah, just thank you again. And without any further ado, I'm going to let you speak to, I think, one of your favourite topics. So I'll let you go for it. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Sarah. What a lovely introduction. Hello, everybody. With my books, see that beautiful bookshelf behind us? Somebody spent a lot of time emptying that bookshelf just for me, because I was supposed to bring my books along with me tonight so you could have a look at them and we'd have some colour behind me. So hence the empty bookshelf there. We'll give you some details about those soon. I really miss having everybody in the room. I know you're there, and I'm guessing in your pyjamas and possibly drinking wine. Enjoy that. It might make it more interesting for you too. Let's get started. So this is one of my favourite topics, and the first thing that I need you to know is this. When we look at coming to something like this and learning about positive parenting and raising positive children, I want to first of all give you a couple of disclaimers. And the first disclaimer is this: nobody is positive all the time. So there is no way I can teach you how to raise positive children and for them to be more positive all the time. We experience a broad range of emotions in our life, and it is perfectly healthy for us to experience unhappiness and jealousy and frustration and all of the other emotions you'll see in the spectrum. So what we're really looking at tonight, and I've just realised I don't actually have my clicker, and I'm notorious for leaving clickers lying around. Here it is. And because there's a little time lag, I'm going to just check which slide I'm up to. So what I want you to understand is, as a parent, there is nothing like raising children. Nothing can prepare us for all of the things that come with raising young children. So what I want to begin with is, you can't be positive and optimistic all the time, because your job is a difficult job. It is a wonderful role that you have the opportunity to engage in, but at the same time, it's a really, really hard thing to do. So don't expect yourself to be positive and happy and enjoying it all the time. And really forgive yourself for those moments where you don't know what to do, because none of us do, including me. And I got to practice on other people's children for like 20 years before I had children of my own. No, not 20 years. That'd make me like 502, I think. But no, so at least a decade, my friends. So keep that in mind. The first slide, I think, that's up at the moment is, what do you already know? And the reason I'm asking that before we get into the strategies, before we look at the context of raising our children, is we often forget that we already know so much about how to raise our children. And because there's so much information out there are people like me and others, we're all trying to share information to be able to support you and guide you in this process. But it's really important for you to take time to reflect on what you already know about parenting and what you know about your family, because your family is different to all the other families that you know. So ultimately, you need to follow your intuition about the best way to raise your children as well. So keeping that in mind, let's keep going. Okay. Oh, this is when I tell you the magic wand. So here's the magical solution. There is no magic wand, my friends. So you come along to something like this with so much hope and so much that you want to find out. And the challenge with supporting young people through their growth and through their development is there's no quick fix and nothing works all the time. So again, you need to be kind to yourself and show yourself compassion as you're learning this role. Just, many of you have only been parents for a few years. So it takes time to develop the skills, and our children are always changing. So I just want you to know that there is no magic wand, and we're not looking for magic wands. What we're looking for most of all is to raise our children in a way that they have the best chance of liking themselves and the best chance of liking others and the best chance in having optimism for their futures. So tonight, we're going to look at how to be connected with your child in a way that not only lasts for right now, but also well into their future, so that you can continue to have the relationship with them that you'd always hope for. We'll also look at ways that you can respond to their challenges and their difficult emotions so that they're more likely to cooperate and work together with you. And we're also going to look, and this is a really important part of parenting, it feels like we're just thrown into everything that's happening in that moment, but ultimately our responsibility as parents is to prepare our children for when they leave us, when they're 18 and up and they've moved out of home. We want to know that they feel confident in who they are and in their own value system, so that they can go about and live a life where all they need from you is that continued love and support. So we're going to look at all of those things. We don't have a very long amount of time together, but we'll cover as much as we possibly can during that time. What you won't get is you won't get a different kid. What I mean by that is, before we have children, we all have a little vision, don't we? We kind of observe other people's parents slightly judgmentally, and we think, well, that's not how it's going to be for me. I'm going to raise this child, and this child is going to be awesome, and this child is going to be a little bit of Mother Teresa and a little bit of Albert Einstein and a little bit of everything that we aspire to as a society to being valuable. And, this expectation of our children is created by all of our egos. It doesn't matter how down to earth we are. Our egos align with these values that we seem to think are attributes that we want our children to have. And we can find ourselves becoming over-invested in wanting our children to be someone sometimes that maybe they're not. And none of us do this intentionally, but it's important that we're brave as parents to acknowledge that these children come to us with their own spark, their own personality, their own set of genetics, our genetics, someone else's, either way, there are so many factors that impact on how our children behave and how they think and how they feel. And so what's really, really important is for us to convey the message to our children, and this really is the number one thing, that we love them and like them exactly as they are. So that unconditional acceptance of the child that we got. And this is really, really hard. And it's particularly hard in public. And, you know, it's like if your child is having a tantrum in a playground. You just want to shut that down, right? Because everybody's looking, and immediately what happens to the ego when our children are not behaving is we instantly feel the spotlight is on us and that there's a judgment being made about our ability to parent our child. And so we must free ourselves from this egoic agenda and remind ourselves that the reality is all children have tantrums, all children have meltdowns, all children refuse to cooperate. Every house, I can tell you after 20 years of doing this, what you see on the surface is not what's happening, because, you know, we're human beings, we're perfectly imperfect, and so we have our challenges. So as a community of parents, you know, my first message to you is to make sure that you free yourself from the pressure that your child will perform in a way that society expects them to perform or expects them to be, and that we allow our children to be exactly who they were, with their own personal stamp and their own temperament and their own character. When our children know this, they feel at ease. It builds their confidence. It builds their optimism. They learn to like themselves more. They learn to see, you know what, yes, sometimes I make big mistakes. Sometimes I say things that I regret. Sometimes I don't do well at school. Sometimes I don't do well at sport. Our children are learning. They have so much more learning to do still. And so when they learn to accept those challenges through our non-judgmental acceptance of them, they can really start to be who they are, and that's when the real magic starts to happen. So we'll keep going. I think I just had a reminder there, did I not? There we go. Oh, we're right. Okay, so I just briefly want to say rewards and punishments. So if we had all night, I could speak just about this topic, but I just want to say why rewards and punishments don't work. And they work in the short term because children will always be willing to do something if they can get something out of it, right? So if they know that if they tidy their bedroom, they can get to something they want to do, or if they stop yelling and screaming, they'll be able to go and do something that they really wanted to do. Of course, we can bribe our children in that moment. Punishments also work because in the moment. Punishments work in the moment because none of us want to experience pain. None of us want to give up the things that we know and love. And what a child will do is they will stop their behaviour in that moment. They will do exactly what they're told to do in that moment to avoid the punishment or to gain the reward. And what's really important for us to remember about that is that it doesn't help a young person develop that internal moral compass to behave whether someone is in the room or not in the room. Early childhood, even those preteen years and teenagehood, is the time for them to make mistakes. It's the time for them to test boundaries. It is very normal. If you are feeling bad that your child is pushing your boundaries, is testing your limits, is losing it every now and again, please know you are not alone. This is a normal part of human development. We need to see what we can and can't get away with, This is how we evolve as human beings. And so if we are too reliant on rewards and punishment, for example, as our method of parenting, what happens is our children are just performing in the moment to avoid pain or to get something that they want. They're not learning and they're not developing their relationship with you, which is one of the most crucial relationships in their life. So what we want to happen when what's ideal is when you can, and I say when you can because none of us, myself included, can be consistent with any of these strategies all the time. So please don't put yourself under pressure to always be on the ball with this. Children can really only behave about 75% of the time. And that's often a shock to people. But do you behave like 75% of the time, less, more? You know, we've had so much more life experience. We've been around for longer. We've got better manners. Our brains are at a much better developmental stage to handle our feelings, to handle our impulses. But our little people, you know, they're just kind of rolling with the moment. You know, their brains are really underdeveloped, and I don't mean that in a mean way, but they really are. They have so much growth that they need in order to be able to follow rules consistently and do what it is we hope for them to do. So always remember that the best thing that can happen when a child is misbehaving or struggling is to accept what's happening in front of you and not meet it with resistance, because resistance meeting resistance kind of is not really a logical thing. And we have to learn, this is, you know, one of the greatest gifts our children give us is they teach us to manage our own feelings. They teach us to really grow as human beings. So when they come to us with a no, when they come to us with big emotions, if we offer a punishment for them to, you know, if they don't stop, or a reward if they do stop, all we're saying is shut it down, be a good kid, and you'll get something or you won't get something. What we want is to accept what's happening in front of us because it's happening, and what we then want to do is just be brave enough to do nothing. And just to pause and just to take some deep breaths so that you're calm enough to be that point of peace amongst the chaos. One of the hardest things to do, and I'm going to teach you how to do that in a moment, like with a magic wand. We've got to always remember that behaviour is communication always. I've been working with young people for well over 20 years, and I've never met a bad one. You know, I've met lots of kids who've really struggled and had a really difficult time, but I'm yet to meet a bad one. And, you know, behaviour is always communication of something. It may be an unmet emotional need. It may, most often, it is a missing social emotional literacy skill. A lot of the time that children misbehave, it's because they don't know how to regulate their feelings. They don't know how to compromise. They don't know how to communicate in a proactive way, or a positive, I should say pro-social way when they're upset. Like we are the same, are we not? You know, we struggle with those same things, but we've got the advantage of life experience and brain maturity. And last of all, sometimes behaviour is communication of a learnt habit, you know, a behaviour that's worked for them to get them out of something or get them somewhere they want to get. And you know, that's the other layer. So there's always something happening underneath the surface. And I've got this iceberg, I think. So what I want you to keep in mind, it feels like a lot more than 3 seconds, my friends. The iceberg is just a little reminder. You've all seen this before. What you see on the surface of anybody's behaviour, not just your children's behaviour, but anybody's behaviour, is just what you're seeing. And you know, that same behaviour one day could have a completely different reason underneath it the next day. And if we're focused on the surface, we're just putting out grass fires all day long. And you know, same with rewards and punishments. If we're just dealing with what's happening and trying to stop it and resist it, you just end up having the exact same problem day after day, month after month, year after year. What we're really looking for in this style of parenting, in this approach to parenting, is we're really looking to provide opportunities for a child's neurological wiring to grow every time they struggle with their behaviour by the responses you're able to support them with when you can. So again, you cannot expect yourself to be able to do this all the time. So when we look underneath the surface of behaviour, we can see there's lots of different things. One is the need for attention. And we're quick to jump on that one and think, oh yes, this child is an attention seeker. Well, I think we're all attention seekers. I think, in fact, I don't just think that, I know that. The literature, what we know about human psychology is we're born with a desire to be connected with others, and we want to be noticed. We want to be seen and heard and valued for exactly who we are unconditionally. And so seeking attention for that is not abnormal. And for many young people, they struggle to get the kind of attention that they actually need, and then they'll go for any kind of attention through any behaviour possible. And the reason for that is sometimes, say a child has a learning difficulty, or a child has autism or an attention disorder, or a challenge that just makes their life that bit harder. When you're struggling with anything, you're trying as hard as everybody else, but you're not getting those rewards that people who aren't struggling with that thing are. And so sometimes you can just feel quite small. And so then you might go about doing some things to get attention that aren't constructive or useful to you, but you're only human and you're a kid. So you go about, you end up with the reputation of class clown and whatever it will be for you to find your place, because that innate human need is to belong and to be connected. The other reasons are power. And again, let's really look at what that is. A child who feels a lack of control or a lack of power in their life can really do a very good job of trying to control everyone else in their environment through their behaviour. And again, we don't have a lot of time to talk about this, but it's important that we really remember that if a child is, seeking control over their environment at school or at home, what it's telling us is, okay, this little person really needs to gain a sense of control. And when we look at control and autonomy, when we look at the literature around the globe, what it tells us is children really need to have that sense of control in their life. They need to see themselves as capable and competent and able to make decisions of their own. And with decision making and kids, they're kids. So, they're not great at making decisions, are they? So if we handed the baton to them and said, what do you think you'd like to eat for recess and lunch? You can prepare your own lunches now. Well, clearly it's going to be, chips and brownies and whatever. And it's not going to be a balanced diet. But why I'm bringing it up is, now is the time for our children to make poor decisions and practice making decisions. We do not want their first attempt at making decisions for themselves and making really bad ones to be when they're teenagers, young adults, and later on in their life. Now is the time. They've got you to love them and support them and tell them beautiful things like, hey, you're not the first person to make this mistake, or hey, I love you no matter what. I struggled with heaps of things when I was a kid too. They need to know that they're not alone. They need to know that they're not broken, and they need to know that when they make a mistake, it's okay. They can recover. I always say to children, there's nothing so bad that you can't make a comeback from it. I work with middle school kids, teenagers, and really little ones, and they're so embarrassed about the times they've been in trouble or the things that they've done wrong. And I tell them, you know what, you're not the only person who's made this mistake, and you will not be the first person to recover from it and make a comeback. And then I draw their attention back on the quality of their heart and the quality of their mind and the strength of their intention and build their confidence from inside out. I haven't forgotten that I'm talking about power, but why I spoke about that is we want them to make those decisions now, and we want to go with as many of those decisions as we possibly can so that they can learn and grow their brain in a constructive way where it doesn't matter. The stakes are not high in early childhood. So if we can go with as much control around, come shopping with me, make a decision between these two products. So it might just be a choice between two different things. So they don't need to be massive decisions when they're little. But as they get older, start involving them in decision making and planning around the things that they're studying at school and the things that they're interested in and what they really genuinely want to do as an extracurricular activity. So all of these things allow them to really start testing out their own mind, and a confident person knows how to do that early on in their life, and then that translates to that confidence later in life. So if you can go with their decisions, if they're basically one of these three things, so avoid going with a decision if it's one, absurd. So if whatever they think is the solution to their problem is completely absurd, keep guiding them. Again, non-judgmentally, just keep brainstorming for ideas. If it's immoral, we're not going to go with that decision either. And of course not if it's dangerous, but otherwise, if it's just a bit of a wonky decision, if it's just one of those things that they can live with, they can recover from, and most importantly, that at the end you can say, well, what did you learn and what would you do differently? And you give that message, I love you so much, and you're so much more than your mistakes, then we're really making that progress for that long-term confidence and resilience, and we're disciplining and responding in a way that is so important for our long-term relationship with our children. So the next is revenge. So many children I see, and don't worry, I hear it all, and I take it all with a grain of salt, but I also what I hear is that misunderstanding, that feeling from children that no one understands me, no one gets how hard it is for me, and so they actively go out to get you back. And none of us are intentionally missing these messages, because there is nothing harder. There is nothing harder than loving someone more than life itself and wanting them to have a great future. We can get caught up in the details of the challenges our children have at the time and then just want to fix it, and they might in that moment not feel heard, not notice that they're struggling underneath the tip of that iceberg. And then last of all, avoidance. So a lot of behaviour is around, you know what, if I can get out of doing this thing that's really tricky for me, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. So let's keep going. 3 seconds. Here we are. So before we move on, a reminder about the importance of an unconditional relationship. In a family, it needs to be the place that you can go home to and be yourself. It's what we refer to as psychological safety. We want it in workplaces, we want it in homes, we want it in communities, we want it everywhere. And all psychological safety is where you can be yourself without judgment. And the way we do that in our families is we look for our children's essential goodness, because all of us were born with essential goodness. Every single one of us, from the moment that we arrived, we were born to connect, we were born to love, we were born to be loved. And as life goes on, we will always come back to that human need to be seen, heard and valued for exactly who we are. And so an unconditional relationship allows our children to be exactly who they are. So the way you do that is you take a moment after this evening together and you just reflect, who is my child? Who are my children? What is it about them that makes them who they are? And we're not going to look at their athletic ability or their blue eyes or how they're doing at school. We're going to look at the quality of their heart and the quality of their mind. These are the most stable human factors that no matter what is happening in your life, whether you have wealth or no wealth or a job or no job, nobody can take your character from you. No one can take your values from you. And if we can instill in our children from the beginning of their life that they are valuable based on the quality of those two things, what we're telling them is, no matter what happens to you, there'll be hard things, there'll be plenty of challenges. Life doesn't follow a straight line. But what you have here, right at the centre of your heart and the centre of who you are, can never, ever be lost. And that's the message that we want to get to our children, for them, again, to have enough connection with us for them to behave their best. Because it all comes down to this, is the person that they're connected with and their ability to be connected with themselves. So unconditional relationships. Oh, I think I just went ahead. So do you mind going back to, are you able to operate the slides from there, Tim? Thank you. To the storm, that's lovely. So the reason I'm showing this is just a little reminder. I want you to know why it's hard to be calm when a child is losing it. Or is it just me that finds that hard? So I just really think it's important as parents that we're just really nice to ourselves about this. There are a lot of people telling us, you've got to be calm all the time, you've got to respond all the time, you've got to be consistent. And listen, here's the thing. In an ideal world, certainly before you become a parent, that's totally achievable. Once you're actually a parent, those of you who've heard me speak before know I talk for fun and for a living. And by this time of night, I've given 3 talks today. My voice is running out. Thank you. I would love the bottle of water. Everyone's so kind. I mean, there's not a lot of people in the room. We're following all the laws. But everyone's... Anyway. So I just want to give you the freedom to know that if you are struggling to manage your emotions, that is completely normal. Young people, children, toddlers, babies, teenagers, and beyond, they come with such high emotion, don't they? So because their impulse control is still, the areas of the brain that hold on to their impulses and manage their emotions are still under mass construction until they're, I'm really sorry to say, 25 or so. We have to accept that they come with high levels of emotion. And when someone comes to you with high levels of emotion, what's really important for you to remember, because I really want you to forgive yourself if you've ever lost your cool, is emotions are contagious, and the contagion of emotion is a very real thing. So if you're met with an emotional storm, you will feel exactly what's happening in front of you. So that's actually to do with our mirror neurons in our brain. So I often give the example of that TV show. Anyone who's as old as me knows Australia's Funniest Home Videos. You're like watching the person, they're coming down the slope, they're about to like slam into a tree or something, and the moment they slam into the tree, boom, and you go, oh, like that. Your reaction in that moment is your mirror neurons feeling what's happening in front of you. So this is what happens when we're parenting our children, is we feel what they're feeling. So when they come to us with high levels of emotion, we experience that emotion right there with them. And the contagion of emotion works both ways. If we are stressed, if we are overwhelmed, if we are losing it, that contagion is also passed back to them. So I want you to forgive yourself, and I want you to know that this is another little gift our children give us, which is the opportunity to learn to be calmer. Notice I put the on the end, because it's hard to be calm all the time. I don't think we'd be experiencing ourselves as whole humans if we're always in a state of equanimity. So the reality is, it's really important for us to remember that we're designed to feel. Our emotions have an important place. Our emotions tell us when there's a problem. Our emotions tell us when we need to be cautious. And so it's really important that we allow our children to experience their emotions and that we learn to regulate our emotions so we have the best chance as often as possible as being as calm as possible. But, I just tell myself, I've got 3 young children of my own. I work with young people who often struggle with their feelings. And what helps me in that moment when there's high emotion around me is just, again, to remind myself, mirror neurons, just a reminder, of course I'm going to absorb this. So now I need to consciously manage myself, and I will tell myself, and there's always research backing behind all the strategies I share with you. But what you've got to do is tell yourself that you're calm, even though you're not. You tell yourself, I'm calm, I can handle this. Take some deep breaths, pause, try not to say or do anything when you're upset. And remember for your child or your teenager that when they're experiencing high emotion, they're experiencing lower than usual levels of intelligence, and their prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of their brain, literally takes a vacation. So they're just acting on impulse and emotion. So there's no point trying to teach a lesson, there's no point trying to dish out a punishment, there's no point trying to offer a reward in that moment because they're just in another place. So remember the emotional storm. Yes, of course it is our job to try really hard to be the calm in the storm, but I want you to also remember that's a really hard thing to do, and you need to take time to develop a conscious practice, and it's a daily practice. And sometimes just having an intention, for me, it's love. So operating from love as much as I possibly can with all interactions and at home, so that in that moment when I'm met with a challenge and a difficult behaviour or a high level of emotion, I try and return to that, and that is a great stabiliser for me. And there may be other things that are useful to you, but it's a conscious thing. You could stick them up on a wall if it all got too complicated. Just do what you need to do. So why I'm showing this, and I share this slide quite a bit, and I explain that it's really about keeping your mouth closed and not talking too much when your child is upset. But when you look up images on the internet of people with, it's just not a very nice image. So I then found this little baby. I typed in cute, and then I thought baby, and then I wrote gaffer tape, and that's what I got. So that's why that baby's up there. I would say that little baby is probably a second or afterwards born, and maybe firstborn not so happy about it. So this is just a reminder, my friends, to whatever you say when you're upset with your child, you're probably going to regret. So until you're calm, try and just wait it out. So if you have a teenager who's coming to you and saying things that are really challenging you, if you react, you won't remember this about you when you were a teenager, but when you were a teenager, you also probably thought you knew everything. And that's part of teenagers' development, is they do think they know everything. And so they say all kinds of things. And when you're younger, you just say stuff and you react and you feel emotional. So giving the passage of time is one of the best discipline tools we can have when we raise our children, because it gives us an opportunity to stay connected with them, and then they realise that they were wrong and they realise, I shouldn't have said that, and they start to calm down and your relationship remains intact. So we want to take a strengths focus with our children. We want to always keep in mind what is strong about them, what they're already good at, what they're already doing right. And we must remember this, because they already know what their challenges are, and it's really tricky as a parent, isn't it, to just focus on their strengths, because we love them and we want them to be okay and we want them to do well. So we might find ourselves always thinking about the challenges they have rather than thinking about the things they're already doing well in. So it's a really important thing. And then you might sit down, a little like with the earlier question about focusing on what is it about your child, what makes them who they are. I'd love you to sit down and think, well, what are my child's strengths? What is it about my child that makes them who they are? And once you've got a handful of those, when your child needs discipline, when they're struggling with their behaviour, that's the time to bring up one of their strengths. You're getting a buy-in in that moment. I'll give you a few more buy-ins as we go along in the last 20 minutes or so. But when you do it, let's just say you've got one of those kids that, you might use the word stubborn, but that can also mean determined, right? And so in that moment, what you're doing is your child is refusing to cooperate. They're refusing to let go, and they're going on and on and on. If in that moment, first you regulate yourself, so you keep as calm as possible, and when the right time intuitively comes to you for you to say something, you might say something like, "I love your determination. You're one of the most determined people that I know. And we're not going to do what you've asked us to do," so you still have your boundaries, but you start by acknowledging their strengths. And these are the tools that grow a better brain. These are the tools that lead to every challenge turning into neurological and psychological growth, rather than let's stamp it out, let's shut it down so they know what they can and can't do, because at one point they're not going to be under your supervision. They're going to be hanging out with friends, they're going to be out there in the big wide world, and we want them to tune back into their internal moral compass, because control-based parenting won't prepare them for that. They'll just be, no one's looking and gee, this is tempting, and that's the hard thing about being a teenager. So NUBS, little acronym I made for you. Really, there are just 4 points. I have a few more things I'd like to cover. If this is what helps you get through those moments of high emotion, the first is just notice what's going on in front of you. We are often so stuck in our agenda because we are so busy. We have so much that we want to get through. There are so many things that parents juggle from one moment to the next and just in one day. And so what happens is in that moment of high emotion or that moment of resistance, it's extremely difficult for us to even be in that moment. So the N just stands for just notice, what is my kid doing? What are they feeling? What do they want? Why is this hard for them? And just feel some empathy for it. At the end of the day, they wake up in the morning just like you or I, wanting to get along with everyone. None of us wants to be in conflict. We want to get along with our parents. We even, children even, believe it or not, want to get along with their siblings all day. It's just they can't yet because they're still figuring out how to get along with their siblings. That's normal, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So we want to notice what's going on, and really all you're doing with NUBS is you're being conscious in the moment. You're not just grabbing whatever strategy you think might work in the moment or that someone else told you to do. You're actually attuning with your child and staying connected with them. The next is seeking to understand. So really try to understand what's happening under that iceberg, under the tip of that iceberg. What is going on for your child at the moment? And if they really struggle with the word no, find out why. We need to look for why. What is the reason? Why are these things difficult? If your child loses it every time they don't win at a game and just starts having a massive meltdown, well, why is that? Do they feel like they're not succeeding enough? Do they feel like they're not doing well enough? Are they feeling insecure? So there's always a reason. The B is for boundaries. We must always, after we've noticed what's happening, after we've shown empathy and some of the ways and understood them. So some of the ways we show empathy are by saying really lovely things like, I can see you really want to do this and you're feeling really frustrated. I understand. And you're giving them that message. You see what life is like for them in that moment. And if you think about the best relationships of your life, they're with the people who empathise with you, the people who understand you, the people who make that time to really notice what life is like for you. So we want to make sure we give them that time, and we're threading their empathy wires when we show them that empathy. So, another way you can show empathy is say it's time to do homework. And your children if they're like most kids, you know, and they're having a great time, it's the last thing they want to do. So when I go to ask our children to do anything that they don't want to do, I go out and when I can, as much as I can, I'll just say, you guys are having the best time on the trampoline, and I know the last thing you're going to want to do is your homework, or if it's the dishes or their chores or whatever it is. But in 5 minutes, it's time to come off the trampoline. So what I'm doing is I'm showing them, I understand that you're having fun. I get what's going on for you right now, and so I'm giving you a warning. I'm giving you a little bit of time to process that it's nearly time to transition into that thing that you don't want to do. And what this does is it deepens and strengthens our connection with our children because they feel heard. And again, think of your best relationships in your life are when you feel heard, when you feel understood. And so when we do that, our children strengthen their connection. They don't come off the trampoline and say, thanks so much for the warning and the empathy, Mum, you are amazing, and then just cooperate, right? What's happening though is each time it gets easier for them, and each time their brain is stronger and more capable of coping with it. So don't think about the quick fix. Think about the long-term gain that these methods have for when they do come out the other end. These are sometimes the trickier path, but oh my goodness, when they get past all those hurdles, the psychological growth and the deep connection with you is priceless. And last of all, we want to look for solutions. You know, if our children are struggling with their siblings, if they're struggling with getting their homework done, if they're struggling with sitting at the dinner table and not poking their sibling, or whatever those challenges are for you, we want to take a solutions focus with our families. This is exactly what organisations do. Problems are a part of life. We want our children to know that there is no such thing as a perfect family like the ones on TV. All families struggle with something. So we want to start open conversations and dialogues with our children and each other so that we're just talking about stuff and we're looking for solutions. So we want to teach our children problem solving, and I'll get to, it wasn't the slide I was expecting, but I know how to talk about this one too. So with problem solving, you know, when our children experience a problem, remember about the contagion of emotion. We feel upset too. So if they're having a problem at school, whether it's with a peer or with someone that they're with a teacher, or there's something that's bothering them, if we jump in as the hero, as the wiser, smarter human being, and we take their problems on as our own, what message that gives our children, and we must support them. So I'm not saying we just go, well, good luck with that one. We support, we hear them out, we help them brainstorm ideas with us. But what I mean by not solving our problems for our children is every time we do something for them that they are capable of doing for themselves, we rob them of that opportunity to develop that confidence, and problem solving is one of those things. So if we go and talk to the teacher about things that are bothering them, or say they leave something really special behind at home and that you knew they really wanted it, if you race into school and you deliver it, you're solving a problem for them, and they're not developing the skills to see that when there's a problem in my life, I have the capability to cope with it. And this is crucial for our resilience. If our lives are abnormally smooth in early childhood, when the real challenges of life start coming, and they do many, many times, because it's life, right? And so when they come, to be a resilient person, you need to have already known how to deal with the day you turned up to school without your hat and had to sit in the shade and not play with your friends. Now, that feels like a massive problem for the kid, and the kid will come home and say it was the worst day of their life and they've got the meanest teacher ever, because they're kids. They make mountains of molehills all the time. So what we've got to remember is when they sit with that discomfort, they learn early in their life that problems are a natural part of the course of our experience of being a human being, and that they can deal with it without mum or dad or anybody else in their life having to jump in and rescue. It's so important that we are not the experts of their life, right? So even though we have all this knowledge, we want to step in as needed and not step in too much, because if we step in too much, then we're saying, I'm smarter and better at this. We want to hear them out and let them have those small falls, those small mistakes, and allow that growth in early childhood. I'm conscious of everybody's time in here, the small group of socially distanced people. But I am conscious of the time. I would love a reminder of roughly, if someone can show me with their hands how much longer I have. No, I think the people have, that's you guys with the wine, even with wine I've probably nearly had enough. But how close are we? Have I gone over time? Oh my goodness. Okay, is anyone still there? They've left the room though, but they're just being polite. All right, beautiful people, I'm going to wrap this up in less than an hour. Not fully, but you can go back to all of the other backgrounds too. So really quickly, let's talk about praise, because it's a really important one when we're raising our children. Praise is so lovely. Praising our children excessively is relatively benign in the scheme of things we can do that are not great for our children. If we focus too much attention on our children with labels of good, clever, sporty, fast, brilliant, amazing, really good at this, really good at that. What we're doing is we're attributing their value as a human being to performance. And as human beings, none of us are stellar performers all the time, are we? So there's ebbs and flows. So there are times where you might be at the peak of your career. There are times when, it's all average. There's times when it's less than average. So that's the nature of life. So instead of praise, instead of saying, good boy, good girl, you're really smart, you're really this, that and the other, and we all say these things from time to time. We just want to make sure that most of our feedback is actually around two things. One is the quality of their heart and mind. So it all comes back to character, because that's who they really are. That's the thing that nobody can take from them. That's the thing that will remain stable in their life. But we want to also focus our attention on the effort they put into things. So let's just say your child gets upgraded to the next level of soccer. It's probably really tempting to say, you're so good at soccer, you're a soccer star, or whatever it is that they try, you say in praise. But that then makes them attach their meaning and value to being really great at soccer. So what happens as they get older is we don't stay necessarily as good at things as perhaps we were when we were 5 or 7 or 10. And if all our meaning is attached to being valuable when we're performing, that's not good for our self-confidence. So the other way you can respond if your child is progressing in something, say soccer, to stick with the same example, you can say you've moved up to the next level, you've been working so hard, all of that practice is paying off. So you're focusing on that effort behind it, and you're showing them that that's what you value, and you attribute it back to their strengths. Because of time, I could put them in a cage if things get really hard. This is just about boundaries and the importance of children having boundaries. They really need to know what is and isn't acceptable in your home. So they need to know when they've done the wrong thing that's not acceptable. So this style of parenting is about leadership and teaching our children, but we deliver these boundaries through compassion and kindness when we can. So we say things like, you've made a mistake. You're not the first person to make that mistake. I understand how upset you are. And the more we say those things before we deliver the boundary, we're allowing them to be human, and we're allowing it early in their childhood, because we don't want them to get stuck on having to be perfect, having to get it right all the time. So boundaries are really important, and I wish we had more time. I've already gone so far over. I was going to talk to you about family members. I was going to talk to you about family meetings, and I really would love to go into more detail about that, but we don't have time, so you might have to do that one through Google. It's really just about bringing your children together, your whole family, and looking at the challenges your family are experiencing and brainstorming together what the solutions might be. I meant to skip 2, Tim, and I'm just almost there. Yes, I've got question and answer. So what I might do, actually, I'm going to stop there because I want to give you as much as I can, but at the same time, I'm conscious of your time. So I think we'll go into question and answer time now.
Madhavi, you've been fantastic, and I want to say to folk, this is recorded, and you'll be able to replay it, because I feel like I didn't bring enough paper to write my notes on, firstly, but I feel like Madhavi's just given us so much information. I noticed how much work a parent needs to do on themselves. Would that be fair?
That's one of the biggest challenges. Oh, oops. Yes, don't go having a normal conversation, will you, Madhavi? Grab that microphone. Jason, absolutely. And I think this really is genuinely the greatest gift our children give us. You know, none of us are perfect. None of us come prepared for this role as parents, and there's not enough emphasis. It's what I try to do as much as possible in my work with parents, is to support them to have that emotional freedom to understand it's okay to have these challenges with parenting. It's okay to have a whole bunch of things from your past that you're still carrying that you still need to work through. Because until we resolve our own things, our children will continue to trigger through their behaviour the things that are unresolved in us. So you're absolutely right. It is really, really important for us to do that inner work. And one of the things we're going to talk about, because I forgot to bring my books, but the Sanguine 21-Day Confidence book that I've put together is based on 20 years of work. And it's really an opportunity to do that work at home. It's for children and it's also for adults to do. So a lot of families are really just they don't realise what they're doing, but they're unpacking a lot of things and really working out who they are and developing those threads in their mind so that they can do that and they can be the best parent and worker and partner and friend that they can be.
Yeah. Sarah, do you have a question?
Yeah, one of the questions, I actually had a question prepared and then towards the end you answered it. So
Oh.
I've just got one other question. I just wondered if you could speak to how we can help our children with their relationships with other children the same age, whether it be younger or teenage, when they're having relationship problems in a peer level.
Yes.
Is there something, some advice or tips you can offer as a parent, how to speak into that without, taking sides or anything?
That's such a great question, Sarah, and it's one that I get, often. The landscape of childhood is so different for when I first went into private practice, almost 20 years ago, and in my work previous to that, the challenges that children were having were really quite different, and we don't have a lot of time to go into the details of what that is, but what we do know is social emotional literacy really needs to come back to the forefront. Our children need those opportunities, those natural opportunities that a lot of children, 20, 30 years ago had. They could go out into the neighbourhood very freely. They would mix with the neighbourhood children. If they had a little bit of a conflict on the spot, they would resolve it. You think back, I don't want to pull you into my age, but I grew up from the generation where the phone was still attached to the kitchen wall, right? So when I was talking to my friends in high school, I was in the kitchen, and so everyone was around, and in real time I'd have this conversation, not via a text, not via social media, in real time. And if I said something wrong, as teenagers sometimes do, I would in that moment hear the tone change in my friend's voice, and on the spot I would have to come up with a solution to stay connected with this person I really cared about. And it's all of those small everyday opportunities to interact with another human being, solve your own problems, talk things through, feel the emotions, even when you're playing outside with other children in your neighbourhood, where the brain develops its social emotional intelligence. So things are quite different for children today and how they're interacting. So when they're struggling, we have to think of that iceberg and we have to think, all right, they're struggling with a peer. What skill is missing here? What skill are they missing? And it's not about not getting involved. It's about being an involved parent from a point of compassion, but also trust in them to resolve it. So you might say something like, they come back home, they tell you all of these things that are upsetting them. And we feel it, don't we? Because we love them so much, and you want to solve it, or you want to make sure it's dealt with, or you might want to say a few words about what you think about that other child, right? But the reality is if we do that, we immediately tell our child there's a really big problem here and it's massive. But it's normal for children to have conflict at school. It's normal for children to have conflict with their siblings. These are all part of learning to get along with other people. So what we want to do is we want to see, well, is this just a small squabble, or is this one that we need more intervention? Use your intuition and judgment. Sometimes we do need to step in, and we must step in when we need to. But most of the time, those things are managed very well by our educators, who are really experienced people, and sometimes they're not responded to, because if we make too big a deal, children can end up making a big deal in their head. So reflective listening is a really great tool. So your child comes and tells you the problem, you simply reflect it back in your own words. So they come and say, so-and-so did this and said that, and you go, oh, okay, so they said this and they did that. You know, is there anything else you want to tell me? Thank you so much for sharing your heart with me. Thank you for telling me what will help. You know, what do you think will help? So you're not being the solution maker. If they're missing a social skill, we need to teach that skill. That's what we need to do.
All right, well, we've got a couple of questions that pick up on what you've just said. So what if your child doesn't come and tell you their problem? So this is from Preeti, and a very similar question with Claire, who says, I'd like tips to draw information out of a quiet,
Yes.
shy, nervous child.
Yes, they're great questions. So they're both from Preeti, or
No,
one from Preeti?
Preeti was the first one, about what if the child doesn't come and tell me, and then Claire said
Yes.
tips about the quiet, shy.
Yes. So Preeti, first of all, you know, one of the hardest things, isn't it, as parents, is you can't make another human being do anything against their will, and it is just what makes it so hard for us. You know, if someone doesn't want to talk, they don't want to talk. And that doesn't mean they don't want to talk forever. It just means in that moment they might need a little bit more time. And that's where it's a really great thing to have something like a journal at home, giving them a blank book for them to write about their day. Because if you do believe something's going on for them, a really helpful thing that you can do is give them a vehicle to remove that from their mind. So it can be really helpful to provide a journal, and that goes the same for the second question about a more introverted child or a more anxious child, is allowing them to do a thought dump in a way that's meaningful to them. I also think it's really important that we let them know with empathy, you know, I can see it's really hard for you to talk about your day, and I really want to hear everything about it, but I do understand that maybe you don't want to talk right now, but I'm always here for you, so maybe we can chat later. If we push too much before they're ready, what can happen is they'll just shut down altogether. So we just want to have an open dialogue, and there's no black and white solution to any of these things. It's about watching our children, meeting them where they're at. With a shy and anxious, more introverted kind of personality, sometimes they need 3 days to process something before they're ready to talk about it. Sometimes they need a week to process something. You know, extroverted people come and go blah, 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 and it's all out. Quieter, more introverted people need time to process it in their mind and to understand. So again, it's about meeting our children exactly where they're at, remembering that we can't make them say or do anything, and if they're resisting, there's a reason, and that's, you know, we can gain information by talking to their teachers and checking that they're okay from their perspective as well.
Cat B has quite a practical question. Would you suggest encouraging conversation at the end of each day? It's tricky to encourage them to talk.
It is. It absolutely is. So I think, again, you know, if we'd had time to talk about family meetings, this is the stuff we've got to talk to our children about. And I think, you know, ultimately this is what parenting is. It's a series of ongoing conversations across the years where we take it to them. You know, so often we're trying to solve all of this on our own. So when our children, you know, we're exhausted, they're exhausted. So if it's important to find, well, of course it's important to find time to talk things through. Take it to your child, take it to them, take it to your children, sit down together and say, hey, it's really important to me that I hear about your day, even if it's the 2 best things that happened today or just something, so I feel connected with the time you're at school. When's the best time to ask you that? When's a good time for us to do that together? So what you're doing is you're really respecting that they have their own unique way of communicating, and they also have their own boundaries about what they do and don't want to share from one moment to the next.
Tomoko says, how do I encourage honesty and not telling lies? And the child is 4 years of age.
I'm so glad you gave me the age, because I was thinking, okay, now what age? Because the answer's different.
It's actually my husband. Yeah,
That's a fantastic question, and you're not alone. You know, 4-year-olds are fantastic liars. It's around about the age developmentally that they realise that they can lie, and it's just really fun to test it out. But there's another part to lies that are really important to remember too, is most of the time children lie on impulse. So they do the bad thing, because they're children. So they do the bad thing, and then they're asked, did you do this bad thing? And they impulsively, and an impulse is act before you think, they impulsively say no, right? And now they've said no, so there's the first lie, and you know they've done it, and then of course they need to back up that lie. And the layers of ridiculousness continue to follow, because all they want to do is avoid getting into trouble. So it's a normal thing when a child is 4. Again, it's a conversation to have and say, do you know, it's so hard to be honest, isn't it, when you've done the wrong thing? You know, when mummy was little or when daddy was little, we were the same. You know, if we did the wrong thing, we didn't want our mums and dads to know either. But in our family, honesty is really important. So I want us to keep working on that. And then you might throw in it, and I'll always find out.
Yes, we always find out. How much should we involve ourselves in sibling squabbles?
Yes.
Intervene or let them sort it out? That's from Bradley.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. I'm going to let us go to the next. I'm trying to move these slides across, Tim, if possible, because at the end, I think there's a link to this. So I'll be speaking for Parenting SA in June, and you'll have a whole hour with me dedicated just to sibling conflict. There it is. I think the flyer is right there. That's a free webinar going live across Australia and overseas for people in the right time zone with Parenting SA, and I'll be presenting that night on how to deal with it. It is hard. What you need to know is it's a very normal function of learning to become who you are. There are no siblings that are always getting along all the time. They need to test out these ideas about getting along with others on their brothers and sisters. That's part of our psychological growth. We practice in preparation. So I think making sure you have really clear boundaries about what you will and you won't accept. So if you don't want to allow bullying, you don't want to allow, you know, really heavy duty things like that can cause really significant psychological pain for each other. But those little squabbles over whose turn it is, who sits in the, I mean, it doesn't feel little at the time, but you know, who sits in the front seat of the car, you know, all of those things, every time you get involved, you will unintentionally be taking the side of one of your children, right? Well, you'll unintentionally be conveying a message that one of these kids is right and that makes the other one wrong. And the challenge with siblings is they're always trying to prove in their mind which one of them is most loved by you, right? So we really have to be careful about how we respond and that we don't get involved. And we want to give them that opportunity to have our support, have us hear out their ideas, but we want to teach them the skills. And we don't have time to go into those details, but if you do have time, and I'm pretty sure Parenting SA will be recording that and it'll be available on their website live, I think it's much better to go through that in full detail.
Well, very good. I do have a question from Nick, and I'm not sure if I've got it right, Nick, so forgive me if I haven't nailed it. But it says here that you'd like to know what to do with a 5-year-old child that starts crying out for single compliments. So I'm guessing they just really want lots of compliments.
Yes, yes. And some kids are like that, right? They want constant reassurance, constant praise. And this is the thing, right? Our children just come out with their own unique stamp. And what we look at is what might be under the iceberg for that. So if your child really needs excessive reassurance, I'd take a moment to try and figure out, is it possible that there are some things that are making them feel really insecure inside their mind, and that's why they're seeking excessive levels of reassurance? So remember, you can still give them encouragement. You might want to spend some time thinking about what their strengths are so that you make sure the compliments that you do give them are fruitful for their psychological development. So you're saying things like, you're such a hard worker, or you really care about others. You really put all your heart and soul into what you do, and make sure those compliments aren't based on things that really aren't valuable, even if that's what they're asking for. And look, you could even say to her, it feels so nice to get a compliment, isn't it? And you just want Daddy to say all of these nice things to you all the time, and I don't have all of these things to say all of the time. We've got other things to talk about, and I really love you for who you are. It's very hard to answer these questions because I don't know your children specifically, so I'm trying to be as general as I can. I hope that helps.
Oh, very good. Well, we do need to finish. Sarah, what did you find helpful from Madhavi?
I think you alluded to it earlier, Jason, when you're talking about just how much we as parents can think about our own behaviour as much as we're obsessed about our child's behaviour. And I think I've started to learn over the years how effective it is to take that chance to pause.
Yes.
And I think more so lately I have had the experience of when I've gone quiet as I've been thinking, how do I react to this? The child's actually changed something they've done or changed something they've said. And meanwhile I was processing it and thinking, how do I respond? And just by that pause, it's been a circuit breaker. And I just really thank you for what you've said about how we respond as parents is just really critical, not just the child's behaviour. So thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
I found the grid quite helpful, so what's underneath in those 4 categories. So that's helpful for me to have a tool to think through what is actually going on here. So those headings are very helpful. Look, here's something I think we can all do coming from here, which is an action that Madhavi named. So going through our children, I have 4, so I've got a lot of homework. Who is my child? Writing down what is their heart and their mind? Who are they? I think that's so useful for us all to do. So thank you for joining us this evening, and I wonder what has been helpful for you. Maybe you could type that into the chat so we can get a little bit of feedback even right now. I just remind us that this video will be available on our YouTube channel, and it'll still sit there on the Facebook Live as well. For those who've registered through Eventbrite, then we will be sending an email out tomorrow with all the information, resources and links. So that makes it quite convenient for you. If you haven't registered but you still want that information, then put a message on our Facebook page, and we'll respond to that tomorrow. We'll go to bed and sleep and all those kind of normal things, and then respond to it. Madhavi did mention to me, and I hope you're still good with this, but she said that she's 10% off her books. Is that right? And
off the Sanguine book. I can't work out how to do it across all of them, and I'm low in stock. But off the Sanguine Confidence Journal, there's 10% off. But in order to order that, for people that have viewed through this, what we might need to do is send the message through to my assistant, or you know what I'm going to do? Tomorrow we're going to put a 10% onto that book for 2 days. So we'll put that on, and so that you can share that with others as well. So it'll just be off the 21-day journal, which is suitable for children and for adults. I think we've got a slide that shows some of the pages from that. So you write straight into it. It takes 5 or 10 minutes a day, and it helps you focus on gratitude and hope and self-confidence, and really working out what is and isn't working in your life. So I'll organise that. If you just give me about 24 hours, I should say, my beautiful assistant, who I'm just saying, oh, we'll just do that. If you can just give us 24 hours, and then we'll put it up for 2 days. And yes, absolutely.
Very good.
And free resources on the website so that's the Sanguine book. You will see that up now.
I saw that link
pages
posted
and
into
pages
the chat.
of that.
Yeah, I saw
And
that.
please remember the free resources on my website. There's a link for that as well. There's ebooks, there's posters to help with your children's social emotional growth. Please download them. They're written with love, and they're there for you to use and enjoy.
So thank you, Madhavi. And I'm sure we can hear the applause from here. Just give it up for Madhavi. Clap, clap, clap. All 7 of us in the room.
Yes, spaced apart beautifully.
Yes.
We really are. Can I just say thank you for having me? Everybody in this room, the small number of people in this room, the effort they have gone to bring in heavy equipment, a bookshelf, and then I forgot to bring all my books in. There are people doing so much here, so can I please say thank you,
thank you
for looking after me so beautifully tonight. You're such lovely people, so thank you.
Fantastic. We are wrapped to have you here today.
My pleasure.
So as a pastor, I would love to finish with a blessing for your family. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May you, as parents who long to bring your very best to raising your children, may you have wisdom and the courage to grow. And may your children thrive in all of life's challenges. And that's what we really pray for you. And we hope that today might help you in realising those things. So thanks for joining us tonight, and have a fantastic week.